Hello, how are you both today?
Very good. How are you?
Wonderful. I'm Alyssa with The Nocturnal, and I really love the show, and I wanted to congratulate you both on your amazing performance.
Thank you.
So this series is based off of a popular book, and I know a lot of fans are going to be really excited about that. Did you both have the opportunity to read the book, and do you think the show complements it well, or do you think it adds kind of like a new twist on the story?
So I did not read the book before. I read it the day I left England on the plane ride home because I was holding out. We have the most amazing showrunners, Gemma and Meredith, who have such a clear vision and also a knowledge of the book that's gone back for 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So they were kind of like the heart of it, and I could really rely on them. I don't know if,
Yeah, exactly the same. I decided to keep like Gemma and Meredith's version of the characters and the story as like my Bible for it. And I think really live by that and let their hard work come through our characters. And I have the book, I haven't read it yet, but it's on my shelf ready for a rainy day.
And I do think that, you know, having now read the book, it's basically, we've just elaborated on it in 8 episodes to, you know, we have new characters, we've aged them up a little bit to show more of what it means to be a woman and to get to show all those parts of it. Yeah. And yeah, I think people really like it.
It's the book and then some.
That sounds good to me. And I think that fans will really appreciate that too, to just kind of, you know, we all have our image in our head of what characters in a book look like. So I think it works really well. So I was also wondering, Edward, you have a lot of intricate fight scenes in this show, and I think everything was really cool to watch. And I was wondering, what was the preparation like for that, and just kind of, you know, working with the sword and all those cool fights?
Yeah, we did a lot of it. We did a lot of fight choreography. We worked hard on it, and I'm really glad that it seems to have come off well. It's, you know, I think fighting in TV and film is something that people love to watch, but it's also something that has to be done right and feel real. And I think, and I really hope that we got there, but it takes hard work, but we loved doing it. It was so much fun.
And fun fact, the Jane and Guilford stunt doubles, who are the most amazing people ever, they're married. They're a married couple.
Are, yeah.
Stunt duo, and we didn't know that until halfway through.
I know, they had, when I was like, our stunt doubles have amazing chemistry as well.
They're like, yeah, we're married.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
That's very cool. Oh my goodness. Well, it was such a pleasure talking with you both, and congratulations again on a great show.
Thank you so much.
So lovely to meet both of you. How are you?
Very well, good. Thank you.
Yeah. And congratulations on My Lady Jane. I had a really great time watching both of your performances.
Oh, thank you.
So Jordan, this series is all about rewriting history, and I really liked how your character is given the opportunity to not only be resurrected in some way, but also have the opportunity to explore his sexuality. So I wanted to know, how do you think these aspects of your character really make for a fresh retelling of this story?
Yeah, it was such a joy to play King Edward, and it was just so much fun, especially that moment when I see my dog turn for the first time, and then you realize that, you know, King Edward is not interested in women whatsoever, and he's attracted to men. And it's just so nice because that's just a moment where you understand King Edward's sexuality, but then that's it, because it's just like, oh, this is who King Edward fancies. And just to show that love between, you know, further on in the series, that he falls in love with this guy called Fitz. And it's just nice because there's so many heterosexual couples within the show, and it's just really nice to see that representation on screen.
Yes, it was nice for me to see too as a viewer, just that kind of diversity in the characters. It was beautiful. And Kate, I had so many thoughts about your character because I couldn't get the image of your feet out of my head. And I had so many questions because, like, I had a little bit of knowledge of Mary going into the show, but, you know, like, she's redefining evil with this character. And first I wanted to know, like, how do you think, because, like, Mary historically is pretty evil, but I wanted to know if you thought that maybe your character was like a fun exaggeration, or if you think it could be accurate in some way.
Well, I think actually historically, I don't know. I think it's probably I think there's a lot more nuance to her, and she had such a complicated upbringing, really difficult, horrendous time where she's brought up to believe she's the rightful heir of the throne, then dropped by her dad, then Anne Boleyn gets her whipped when she's looking after Elizabeth, and just separated from her mother. Like, she had all these things going on. So I think, no, I don't see her as a villain historically necessary, and taking into account the time she was living in with a psychopath for a father. In the series, yes, she's a villain. Yeah. And, you know, that was how the character serves that story, by being the nemesis or the villain. So I went with it, and I really enjoyed it.
Yes, I could tell it. I really believed your performance, and I can't stop thinking about the feet. I do want to know, do you know about her, like, not, because to me, it felt like even in a time when people didn't really bathe frequently, she was still considered filthy in some way.
So that came from Gemma and Meredith. They were just obsessed with Mary having filthy feet and filthy fingernails, and just hating washing. So I didn't question it so much. I'm not sure if that was like historical. It was just one of those things I was like, yeah, cool, sure, fine. So they're just dirtying my feet before the take, and then I
wonder why you don't like to wash.
Well, I think she's quite particular, Mary, about what she, I think she finds things and people difficult, and washing, she's a complicated cat.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. I had a really great time talking with you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, Mairead. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. I really, really enjoyed your performance, and I wanted to congratulate you on My Lady Jane.
Thank you so much.
My biggest takeaway from this show was that although Susanna is an incredible friend to Jane, Jane isn't always there for her in the way that, an equal friendship, as you could say. So I wanted to know, what did you think about this concept? Because for me as a viewer, it felt as though because of that kind of unequal relationship, it kind of made it easier for Susanna to leave. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think because when her and Jane leave the palace, I think Susanna is really in panic, and she's like, we can't do this like this. And obviously she's holding a secret there, where she's in her mind is trying to explain, and she has a beat where she's about to explain to Jane why she really cannot leave the palace, and then Jane, I think, is just like, it's fine, come on, let's go. And I think she realises that she can't really say no to Jane, and maybe in that moment she thinks, well, maybe I could tell her at some point, and if we are going to live freely and we are going to have money because of her mom's ring, maybe it could be possible. And then I think very quickly when we realise that, like, that Susanna has to break free and do her own thing, I think she realises that her relationship with Jane actually hasn't been as equal as she maybe thought it was, and she's been aware of this power dynamic, and I think Jane is completely oblivious to that. And obviously later in the series we see them having a conversation where Susanna lays it down and says, you realise like what has gone on or what I've had to do, and you've been completely oblivious. And I think Susanna believes that maybe if Jane had been more interested, or maybe if the dynamic had been more equal, that then she could have explained to her and they could have worked on it together. But unfortunately it's been pushed to that. But I think the freedom that she experiences from leaving the palace is actually really empowering, and I think that's actually ended up as the best decision, and she's it needed to happen, I think.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because my next question, I was going to talk about how Susanna's kind of developing her own sense of leadership, and, Archer's the leader of the Ethians, but she wants to make some changes too. So I wondered, like, how significant do you think that was for her, and being able to bring, like, especially at the end, bringing everybody together to help Jane?
I think it's, I think Susanna's really clever and quite intelligent, and, we see from the start in her situation where she's managing to live and work with her best friend, work for her best friend, I guess. She's exploiting kind of an opportunity, or is able to kind of make the best of a bad situation. And I think that's like, she's very cleverly doing that later when she has joined the pack and with all the other Ethians. She's learning from Archer and realising, let's say, the discrimination that's been going on for years past, and is wanting to have an influence and change things. And again, when the opportunity arises to help Jane in some way, despite what may have happened, I think that she's willing to understand that, look, Jane, she's a product of her privilege, and that perhaps she is just oblivious to what life is actually really like for her. But obviously we see that Jane is kind of doing the work and is trying to understand on the other side. But I think it feels like a no-brainer when that opportunity comes available, and when Edward comes to her and says, I need your help, I think she thinks, yeah, I want to help here.
That was great. I really appreciate your insight on that, because I was going through my mind as I was watching, but I really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your lovely questions.
Hi, Liz.
Great,
nice
thank
to see you.
It's wonderful to meet you, and congratulations on a wonderful show. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I really liked that there is a slight alliance between your characters and between the parents having an agenda for their kids to make their way through royal status, but also I thought that maybe there might have been like an unsaid bond because they both had lost their spouses. I don't know if this is something you realized or if it was just a coincidence. I was curious if you had thought about that while filming.
They are both in very precarious situations, because really you do need a husband and it's not maybe cool to be a single parent in Tudor England. You need backup. And in a way, we are that for each other, because our aim is the same, because we need our children to behave in the ways that we need, that we feel the outcome will be right. So we're sympathetic with each other in that way, aren't we?
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, actually. That's an interesting observation, yeah. I mean, it wasn't uncommon, of course, in those times for partners to be lost.
Especially in childbirth.
Yes, and we're both sort of scheming with each other for the good of our families, to stay prosperous, because Dudley doesn't have as much money as you might think he has, so he's desperate to keep his position in the court. And when you see the court, I'm having to deal with Dominic Cooper as Lord Seymour, who is he can't be trusted, but then neither can I.
That's a good point. Yes, it's tricky with this show, but I was thinking, very tricky. And Anna, I was thinking about how Lady Frances, she's not the most loving mother. She's a little more abrasive, but I could really tell that she wants the best for her daughters. And I was wondering, yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking about how these are real people that you're portraying. And I wondered, do you think your portrayal is very accurate in terms of like the intentions of a lot of mothers of this era?
I think the only thing the only thing that was written about Frances Brandon, she was called, before she was Frances Grey, and Lady Jane Grey writes in a diary that her mother pinches her. That is actually true. So it has been taken from that Frances, the mother, was a very overpowering, dominant, frightening. But I don't even know if that's true, but that is just the one thing that was actually definitely written about her. And from there, in the whole of history, she's seen as this kind of villainous, cruel, maybe not cruel exactly, but, powerful, frightening woman.
But still very witty and fun to watch at the same time.
I know, that's the writers. They think she's funny. They like her because they're both women. They both love their mothers, and they say their mothers are both very powerful women, and it makes them laugh. So when they write the scripts for Frances or whatever, they find her character really funny, and that's when you're lucky as an actor. If the writer is relishing writing that part, then you're aligned with it, and that's where you're lucky.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I enjoyed both of your performances so much. And I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing really well. I love the show so much. I wanted to congratulate you on an amazing job.
Thank you so much.
What interested you both in telling Jane's story? I feel like I haven't heard that much about her, and I feel like we should because it's really interesting. So what intrigued you both about her story?
Funny about us, Meredith and I met as adults. We were very similar teenagers who were obsessed with Lady Jane Grey. There's a painting by Delaroche which shows Jane very vulnerable and beautiful and helpless and doomed.
And moments from her own beheading.
Exactly. And there's a movie with Helena Bonham Carter and Carrie Elwes called Lady Jane, which is beautiful and depressing. And then I was on the subway in New York City and saw a girl reading this book called My Lady Jane, and she was reading like this. So I didn't even know it was about Jane Grey. I just bought it because I'm a reader and I'm always looking for new books. Read it, became an instant fan of the book, and thought it could be an extraordinary TV series.
And then when I read Gemma's pilot, I not only was obsessed with the pilot, but after meeting you, obsessed with you. But we were also just really drawn to this chance to revisit a character that we both were so interested in when we were younger. But then as we got older, we reevaluated her life, and she wasn't this like beautiful, instead of looking at her as a doomed, tragic figure, being able to tell a story where the damsel in distress essentially saves herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's so incredible how she brought you guys together. I never hear about stories. That's very cool. And I actually had a question about Jane that you featured in the show. So I was really interested in all of the little like medicinal techniques that Jane has. She's like, oh, you should try this, or you should try pollen in your morning ale and things like that. I thought that was so interesting. I wanted to know, was that something that you found in your research about Jane?
The real Jane Grey was not particularly into medicine. She was mostly into religion, but which was harder to like externalize into something that you could see.
But she was one of the most educated women of her time.
That's
she was
right.
educated with her cousin, the king. She was... famous intellectuals of her time wrote her fan letters.
Yes. But when it came to the medicinal stuff, we had these three fantastic historians, Susanna Lipscomb, Dr. Joanne Paul, and Dr. Ruth Goodman. And we are history nerds, but we're not experts. And they were the experts. So they would provide all kinds of details that we used for Jane's interest in science.
All right. Do you have a favorite technique that you might have taken? I don't know if there are.
I've actually done pollen, but I didn't do it in my morning ale. But I did pollen and honey on toast when I had very bad hay fever one year. I don't know if it worked. Well, the seasons changed and then it went away. So sure, it worked.
Let's say it worked. And it worked, and she was cured.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. You were both very fun to talk to, and
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.